Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to today's IEEE USA live stream webinar, Interviews That Get Results, the sequel to our previous webinar, Resumes That Land Interviews, presented by owner and founder of The Authentic Path, Helen Godfrey, which you can access on our Facebook and YouTube channels at IEEE USA. Helen joins us again today for another insightful career webinar that will help you ace that interview and land your dream job. Welcome back, Helen.
Thank you so much for having me. Next slide, please. So a little bit about me. I have a master's in counseling and a bachelor's in French. I'm a national certified counselor, a board certified coach, and I'm a licensed therapist in the state of Texas. My career services background has ranged from recruiter, employer relations, career coach for liberal arts, business, engineering, pre-law, alumni, PhD, really all majors and individuals with a wide range of background and experience. I also served as the associate director at the University of Houston University Career Services, as well as the associate director for career services at the College of Engineering at Florida International. Before I was a career coach, I lived in Japan for 2 years where I taught English through the JET program. I was also a Peace Corps volunteer in West Africa. My first 2 years, I taught English, and my third year, after a competitive process, I was selected as a regional rep where I was a liaison between the local government, Peace Corps volunteers, and Peace Corps staff. That French degree came in handy after all. Now I'm the owner of The Authentic Path, where I offer virtual career and life coaching. And I also work at the University of Houston College of Business as a senior career development specialist, where I work with our MBA students. Next, please. The common denominator I've found throughout my career as a career coach is most people have a hard time figuring out who they are, what they want, and how to explain it to others. Part of the challenge is the inability to recognize our own talents. We all seem to have a blind spot regarding what we're good at. We think, I find this so easy, it must mean everyone would find it easy. But the exact opposite is true. What you find easy, other people will see as complete genius and say, you find that easy? A good way to figure out your skills and talents is by thinking about what you find fun, easy, and enjoyable at work. What do your boss, customers, and coworkers compliment you on? Are there some common themes in their compliments? For example, are you good at diffusing conflict? Do you work well under pressure? Do you put people at ease? Are you detail-oriented? These are some great themes to build your interview responses around. In an interview, you want to make sure you're selling what you like to do, because those are the tasks that you're probably good at too. If you don't get the job, fantastic. You probably wouldn't have liked it. If you do get the job, it will probably be a good fit. Let's move on to the agenda and then dive deeper into interviewing. Next, please. Agenda, we will go over interview tips, the STAR interview method, how to prepare for an interview, typical questions, virtual interviewing tips, how to ask questions at the end of an interview, thank you notes, and negotiating compensation. Next, please. Congratulations on your interview. Now what? Next, please. So, tips. Ask about the hiring committee. Knowing your audience will be helpful as you prepare for the interview. Parking. Find out the details. Is it a parking garage and they validate meters that only accept change? Directions from the parking lot to the building are especially important when it's a big office building. Arrive 10 minutes early to the office, but feel free to get there earlier and simply wait in your car. You may not want to arrive to the actual office too early simply because they won't be ready for you. It can be a little bit awkward. I remember one applicant I was interviewing arrived almost an hour early and waited in the lobby, which was right next to our conference room. That's where we were conducting an interview with another applicant. Be nice to everyone you meet within a 20-mile radius of the interview. I heard about one applicant who was running late to his interview and fighting over a parking spot with someone. He won the fight, but did he? The person he was fighting with was the hiring manager. Oops. One of my former bosses was a hoot. One day she was covering the front desk for the receptionist. Someone approached the desk and quite rudely announced she was there to see the director. My boss walked into her office, which was right next to the front desk, and walked out, announcing herself as the director. You never know who you're talking to. Most companies will ask the receptionist his or her impression of the applicant as well. You're on starting 20 miles from the interview all the way through the door. Attire. Be neat, clean, neat trim, clean fingernails, wear professional attire. Men, a suit and tie is always a good choice. And if you're wearing dark pants, wear dark socks rather than white socks. Ladies, a pantsuit or skirt suit is fine. Even if it's a casual work environment, remember, you don't have the job yet. The day of your interview is a great day to skip cologne or perfume, but of course, wear deodorant. Lunch and dinner interviews. Don't order the most expensive item on the menu. And this is a personal choice. I wouldn't recommend ordering alcohol. They will be seeing how you interact with everyone at the table, including the wait staff. So order items that are easy for you to eat because you will be asked questions. Next, please. The goals of the interview. Can you do the job? Are you a good fit on the team? The good news is you were called into the interview, so they think you can do the job, but they want additional details about your approach. Your resume is like the preview of a movie, and the interview is the equivalent of being convinced that you want to see the entire movie. That means the hiring committee wants details about your background. Next, please. Most companies are going to use behavioral-based interviewing. Why? Because how you behaved in the past, how you handled a situation in the past is a great indicator of how you will behave in the future. My clients always ask, how can I stand out? How can I be different from the competition? And the answer is by telling stories. Most people just list adjectives. Telling stories is how you stand out. Telling stories shows the listener what you can do because you've done it in the past. Here's the kicker. Your story should be a minute or less. So most of you, would you train for a marathon the day before the race? Probably not. Most people would be training up until the day of the race and not just the night before. I think this strategy is really helpful when we're thinking of interviewing skills. It takes time and practice. And yes, it is a skill. You want to give examples and to help the hiring committee understand what you're bringing to the table. When you tell a good story, at least 5 or 10 additional transferable skills will be showcased. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, and that's how you want to set up your interview responses. We're going to go into each one in a little bit more detail. Next, please. So, situation, what was going on? So if you think about a play or a movie, the situation would be the scenery or the setting. It helps a listener understand your story if they understand the background. However, most people spend the majority of their time describing the details about the situation. You want to give the listener some information so they have context, but you don't want to spend all of your time here. So, where are you? Are you traveling overseas? Which company are you working for? Are you part of a team? Next, please. Task. Task is your role in this situation. Even if you're working on a team in an interview, you want to focus on your role. So in a play or a movie, task would be, which character are you? What are your responsibilities in this particular example? Next, please. Action. In a play or movie, action is your lines and your thought process. What did you say? What did you do? If you're trying to showcase your communication skills, you could recreate the dialogue between you and the other person. This gives the listeners a great idea of how you actually communicate because you're using the same words or nearly the same words. If you had a particular problem, walk them through a snippet in time. And this is a good practice for any interview answer. You always want to think about, I remember one day, I remember one time, I remember this one particular customer, I remember this one spreadsheet I was dedicated to, analyzing, and you want to walk them through what you did. So telling is the equivalent of listing the ingredients of a chocolate cake. Showing is walking them through how you bake the cake. The first thing I do, I lay out the ingredients on the counter to make sure I'm not missing anything. Then I get my mixing bowls and spoons. Then I crack the egg. There's a lot of detail in any accomplishment. Focus on what you like doing the most. And whatever you talk about during the interview, they think that's what you are selling. So I had an industrial engineering client who was confused. Everyone thought she wanted a managerial role rather than an industrial engineering role. Well, I quickly found out why. All of her examples centered around her experience as being a manager rather than her experience as an industrial engineer. Next slide, please. Result. What was the outcome? What happened? Even if you failed, what did you learn? Next slide, please. Here's a question that I get a lot. How can I make sure I'm prepared for every single question? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. One, look through your resume. Anything on your resume can be an open-ended question. Tell me about your education. Tell me about this particular bullet point on your resume. Go through your entire resume line by line. If every bullet point was a question, what example would you use using the STAR method? Each bullet point may have more than one example because each of your accomplishments, there's a lot to it. Do more than think about your interview answers. Type them out, practice them out loud. I have my clients put their transferable skills under each example, so regardless of the interview question, they can be prepared and pick the best response depending on the question. Remember, they like something on your resume, which gives them the impression you can do the job. So it's up to you to show them how you're a fit, not just tell them you're a fit. The difference, telling is listing adjectives. Showing is giving specific examples that are a minute or less. The nice thing about telling stories is that you know when to start and you know when to finish. Interviews tend to be stressful for most people, so you'll want to be extra prepared, knowing that your nerves may kick in. Once you've gone line by line through your resume, do the same thing with the job description. Turn everything they're looking for into a question. Are there any reoccurring themes in the job description? What examples would you give to show that you can meet their expectations? In every job, there are going to be tasks that we like and tasks that we don't like. Focus your examples on the task you enjoy. That is, if you want to be happy in your next job, which I'm assuming you do. So focus on what you like doing, not just I can do that, but focus on what you really like. At the end of the interview, you can ask questions around both the tasks that you like and that you don't like. For example, if you like a lot of face-to-face time with others, you could ask, what percentage of time am I working with others? Or what percentage of time am I tracking data? It may not feel like it, but you're interviewing them too to make sure this is a job you will enjoy long term. Now, there might be parts of the job that you don't know how to do yet. Can you do some basic research before the interview to at least get a general understanding? LinkedIn groups are a wealth of information. Join a related group and ask if they know of any resources for you to learn about ABC. When you're asked about that task, you can say that you've done some research and mention what you do know. This could be a great time to throw in an example of how you learn and connect it to this task. As a side note, don't say anything negative about anyone you've worked with during an interview. Problems come up, there's personality differences. Be sure to rehearse all of your interview answers and work through any anger or resentment you may feel about any of your past jobs. You don't want that to come across during the interview. Now, let's talk about some typical interview questions. Next, please. Tell me about yourself. This question is confusing to many job seekers because it sounds like a question someone sitting next to you on an airplane would ask. In an interview, they're really not looking for personal information with this question. They're trying to see if you're a good fit for the role. You can give a brief overview of your background and connect it to the role that you're currently applying for. Is there something that you really enjoy doing in your current role and you notice that this role has more opportunities to do that task? What caught your attention about this role? What do you think you would enjoy? You can take that quality and give an example of how you've done it in the past successfully using the STAR interview method. Next, please. Definitely be prepared to answer questions about your strengths and weaknesses. Again, you don't want to simply say, one of my strengths is I'm a team player. You'll want to give an example using the STAR interview method. When you want to discuss your weaknesses, make sure it's something that you're working on and not something that would be detrimental to the job. If you don't like public speaking and your job requires you to do presentations 99% of the time, that might not be the best weakness to choose. If, however, it's not a part of your job and you join Toastmasters, that might be okay because it's not an essential part of your job and you are taking active steps to improve. Next, please. Why should we hire you? Focus on what you can bring to the organization rather than how the job will be beneficial to you. What experience do you have that is unique or could be helpful in this role? Perhaps you've lived and worked overseas, and many of the company's clients are from that particular country. Maybe your experience gives you an added perspective. For example, you might have worked at a company that was a customer of this company. So now you're bringing the customer perspective into this role. Next, please. What do you know about the company? Why do you want to work at this particular company? What is it about the work they do that you find important and valuable? Being happy in your career is a combination of your skills, your interests, your motivators, and your values. How are your values in alignment with the company's values? You want to show you've done your research regarding the company. What are their latest accomplishments? Did they just roll out some new products? What do you know about the CEO and their mission statement? Mary Kay, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, said, "Everyone has an invisible sign hanging around their neck that says, 'Make me feel important.'" This goes for companies too. The hiring committee wants to know you're genuinely interested in the company and their mission. You can incorporate your research into your interview answers. Next, please. Where do you want to be in 5 years? This is a challenging question because you want to focus your interest on the current role at hand. A safe bet, and my guess that this will be true for most of you, is to think about the skills you want to continue to develop and how that will add value to the company. Next, please. Finding out about you without asking questions. Google and social media search. Most recruiters will Google you before they call you in for an interview. They may look at any or all of your social media profiles. You can put privacy settings on your accounts. My advice would be to approach your social media accounts as though everything you post is essentially a giant and permanent billboard. Be comfortable with the choices that you make. Salt. One recruiter told me that during lunch interviews, he watches for applicants who salt their food without tasting it. To him, that indicates a person who makes decisions without knowing the facts. Airport. One hiring manager loves to test applicants' ability to handle stressful, unplanned situations because that's what the job requires. She picks the applicant up from the airport and on the way back pretends to be lost. The applicant's reaction to this situation tells her whether or not he or she will be a good fit for this role. Car. Some recruiters like walking applicants to their cars. Applicants who have stressed their organizational abilities may lose their credibility when the recruiter looks in the car and sees a tennis racket, old pizza boxes, fast food wrappers, socks, let's hope they're clean, and other items covering the front and back seats. Next, please. Virtual interviewing tips. Recruiters have a hard time differentiating between a bad interview experience and a bad or a candidate that's not a good fit. Do everything from your side to make the experience positive. Here's some things you can do. Dress professionally, at least from the waist up. Have good lighting and be mindful of your background. Again, sort of like the car example, if you tell the hiring committee you're very organized and behind you is a messy bed, the evidence of your statement won't be too compelling. A blank wall is always a safe bet, and ask family members for privacy during your interview. Next, please. Questions to ask at the end of the interview. You want your questions to center around your interest in the role, but not the salary or benefits, because that's really the last step when they're making you an offer. So some questions could be, in 3 months, how will you know you hired the right person? This helps you understand the manager's priorities and gives you a better idea if this sounds like something interesting to you. What were some of the biggest challenges the last person faced in this role? What is the feedback loop between someone in this role and the manager? This is a good time to ask about the really appealing parts of the job and find out how much of the job is doing the particular task that you like. You can also ask about the parts of the job that you may not be as enthused about. You don't have to tell them that you don't love that part of the job. They won't know. But if it turns out most of the job is focused on what you have no interest in doing, it's probably not the job for you. I wouldn't announce that, but I would keep it in mind in case you get a job offer. Some applicants impress the hiring committee so much, even if this role wasn't a good fit, they connect them to people in their network where they may be a good fit. I wouldn't ask for this, but know that it happens. In fact, one of my clients did such a great job that the hiring committee is creating a role for her. So things like that can happen. Ask them about their next steps and the hiring timeline. How soon do they hope to make a decision? Next, please. Always write a thank you note. Make sure you get everyone's business card on the hiring committee so you can write a personalized note to everyone. Thank them for their time, reiterate your interest, and mention anything that came up during the interview of interest. Maybe someone explained an important part of the role to you during the interview and that really sold you on this job, and now you're even more enthused. You can reference back to that in the thank you note. Most people will probably send an email, and it's recommended to do so within 24 hours of the interview. Personally, I would lean towards an email because it's more reliable, and if your handwriting isn't great, your reader will probably appreciate the legibility of your email and thank you note. If you go to the company in person, you could bring blank thank you notes and write them after the interview. Make sure you find another spot outside of the office to do this and bring the notes to the receptionist. You may want to bring some extra thank you notes in case you make a mistake and/or some whiteout. If you decide to mail a thank you note, it may take longer. And remember, there are other applicants for this job. You don't want them to have a competitive advantage over you due to a thank you note or lack of one. When I was a hiring manager, an applicant mailed a thank you note. It arrived 3 months later, and we're in the same city. This isn't the applicant's fault, but it did negatively impact our initial impression. Next, please. Some salary negotiation where you can look at different salaries are salary.com and glassdoor.com. They can both give you an idea of the salary range for the role you are seeking. Next, please. Let's talk about negotiating. Normally, they will tell you verbally that they would like to make you an offer, but be sure to ask for a written offer as well so that you can review not only the salary, but the additional benefits, such as the 401k, healthcare, vacation, sick time, and so on. You'll want to review and consider the package as a whole. Negotiating a salary can be a very awkward part of the job process. When you start the conversation to negotiate, make sure your focus is on being enthused about getting the offer. If you're asking for additional money, make sure you have valid reasons to support your request. What qualifications do you have that will make you able to hit the ground running? What experience have you had that will benefit the company? Some areas that you may be able to negotiate on are salary, hours, work from home, and vacation days. Once you accept the job, you should cancel any pending interviews you have coming up and plan on staying in this role for a minimum of 1 year. For most people, it takes at least 3 months to feel comfortable in their new role and up to a year to feel as though they understand their job. Be patient. If you're pressured to give a salary, you can always say, I'm willing to negotiate for the right opportunity. Or if you're required to give a number, you can give a range instead of an exact number, such as mid or high 70s. This will give you more wiggle room than an actual number. Next, please. Now we're going to open up the floor for questions, and I'd like to thank you all again for being here.
Thank you so much, Helen. Folks, we are now at the Q&A portion of the webinar, so go ahead and ask your questions in the comments section and we'll load them onto the stream for Helen to answer. Helen, we're going to give it just a couple more minutes for questions. All right, so it doesn't look like we have any questions for today, folks. If you come up with any questions after this webinar, you can reach out to Helen directly. Her contact information has been provided on the stream. Thank you so much, Helen, for joining us today again and for giving our viewers your tips on showcasing your value to hiring managers during the interview process.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. Check back daily on our social media for updates on future webinars, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day.